All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Russ Brown Motorcycle Attorneys. I am Olivia, your host today, and I'm chatting here with Tyler Hazelwood from Lords of Gastown. So thank you so much for connecting with me today. I'm really excited to talk about your brand, what you're doing. You're really bringing some cool style out to the West Coast and West Coast Canada. We're both Canadian, so I can really appreciate seeing what you're doing for our country, and we want to take it down to the States and talk about it. So without further ado, introduce yourself, Tyler. Tell us what you're all about and where did your love of motorcycles start from?
Yeah, thanks for having me, first and foremost. Yeah, Lords of Gastown is actually going into it's our 10-year anniversary. I'm working on the 10-year anniversary collection right now. Um, we actually kind of started as a passion project 2011, but we incorporated in 2013, so we're kind of gonna go with that as our 10-year. Um, Love for motorcycling spawned, I guess, early on. I grew up in a town called Langley,
Mhm.
um, which was very much heavily motorcycle. Growing up, everyone's dad and uncle had a Harley, so definitely something that I was always interested in. And I guess music was a big part of my life up until motorcycling, and it was basically a financial thing. As soon as I was able to afford a Harley, kind of motorcycles took over my passion for music, and I had suffered with Crohn's disease since my early 20s, so 21. So motorcycling was a big part of the driving factors that for me to get healthy and get out on the road, and that's something that I would visualize when I was stuck in bed sick. um, was was the freedom of being on the road with a motorcycle, and that kind of manifested for me. um, it was kind of music, motorcycling, and marijuana that were a big part of my healing process, which is why we started the spin-off brand, Lords of Grasstown,
Okay.
which is a cannabis-based sister brand.
Mhm.
And at the time, cannabis wasn't legal in Canada yet, and ever since it has um, become legal, we've really kind of positioned ourselves to be part of the legal market and try and bring a same kind of style and like sophisticated stoner punk was kind of the vibe that we were going for. Um, and yeah, that's kind of like where the foundations of the brand started. And um, in 2020, I sold, or my partner and I sold Lords of Grasstown to a company called Pack Roots, which was a publicly traded um, licensed producer of cannabis.
Okay.
And in 2022, I went into negotiations to actually vend in Lords of Gastown into this publicly traded company, which is now actually just closed the deal. And so it's called Lords Worldwide Holding is the publicly traded company now, which is pretty mind blowing to me that a little t-shirt passion project 12 years ago now is become a publicly traded company in both Canada, the States, and Germany. Um, yeah, that's kind of the top overall view of where Lord started and where it is at the moment now.
Okay, so you're doing a lot in the past 10 years, and you said it was a passion project. So I think when things start off like that, you're putting your heart and soul into it. So, and it's developed into this, which is really great to see. So I want to know what inspired the overall aesthetic of your brand and the name, because for those watching, I'm sure a lot of people don't know what Gastown is, and it's this cute little area in Vancouver. It was the original settlement. It has a lot of rich history. So talk to me about the name, where that derived from, and the aesthetic of it all. How you inspired, or where did the inspiration come take it to where it is now?
Yeah. So for the name, it was actually a nickname given to the group of guys that were. It was almost like a drinking team. Like I said, music was a big part of my life. I had Vancouver's first DJ and music production school in just outside of Gastown,
Oh, right
and
on.
I became a partner in the Chronic Tacos. The brand from California came up to Vancouver, and they actually bought a bar slash cantina in the middle of Gastown. So um, I was a resident DJ there and a few other places. And after we would close, we would go to the other bars that were still open. And it was just kind of a nickname that was given to us by the local bartenders that, oh, the Lords of Gastown are here. And we kind of like stuff and spend all our money that we made that night. And it was just a nickname. And I had a clothing brand called Shit's Poppin' Off that was based in the electronic music scene, and I really liked design and graphic design, and I basically took the Lords of Dogtown logo and I figured out how graphically to put Gastown on the cross, and so we just made up these shirts as kind of our drinking team shirt, and they sold out. And this is right at the same time we got our Harleys, and we're riding around, and people just really gravitated to that first brand. Are you whereabouts in Canada are you from?
So I'm from Ontario, so just outside of Toronto, Oshawa, the Dirty Schwa.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if you're familiar with East Van, but the East Van cross is a very iconic symbol. So I think people related to that because we basically did a Gastown cross, and it was very much like uh, homage to Lords of Dogtown and the East Van Cross. And yeah, it really started from a run of, I think our first run of T-shirts was 30 T-shirts,
Mhm.
and it very organically became a lifestyle brand, and really the first, to my knowledge, of its kind in Canada. And to your next point, the aesthetic basically came like I kind of always use a reference that we were always, like I said, in love with Harley Davidson, and at the time, Harley Davidson design wise went in a direction that was the opposite of what we wanted for a style, because it was very kind of got Ed Hardied and bedazzled, and a lot of like affliction type stuff, and that style was not where we wanted. It was very much just matte black and simple stuff. So we just created clothes really that we wanted to buy from Harley Davidson that just weren't there. And same with the bikes. Like, it was at the time when everybody was taking everything that was chrome off of it and everything was black.
Right.
And of course the influence at the time of you know um I I hesitate to say it, but because it became such a cliche. But Sons of Anarchy was right in its heyday at that time. Right, was when the club style became like commercial and all that. And that's basically what it was. Is that we just created a brand and clothing and aesthetic that we weren't able to go and buy off the rack from Harley Davidson.
And do you think e-commerce has a lot to play with the growth of your brand? Because I used to work in the apparel industry for quite some time, and I always noticed that there just wasn't cool shit. And I'm seeing a lot more because of the e-commerce. And do you think that's a big push now that a lot more cool or chic apparel is coming out for motorcyclists?
Most, I'd say, social media coupled with e-commerce definitely was the success of our brand. We didn't have a lot of capital starting out, so a lot of organic growth,
Mhm.
um, and like the ability to reach that many people without a huge advertising budget was key, through like the launch of Facebook and Instagram. And yeah, we started out on a platform called Big Cartel, and then we moved over to Shopify, and Shopify has been obviously a game changer for us as well. And yeah, I would agree that that e-commerce was a huge part of the success, especially since, um, like I said, we didn't have a lot of capital starting out, and I was able to. We did a like an upcycled program. Uh, a friend of mine at the time had just graduated from fashion school. She wasn't really using um, her cut and sew skills, and we just started like going to vintage stores and buying vintage leather jackets and denim and jean jackets and basically chopping them chopping them up and making new products out of them and selling them as one-offs. And then we got to a place where we were making samples and we would photograph them and we would put them online and basically be able to sell off of pictures as opposed to having to stock a bunch of inventory,
Okay.
which fast forward, like that was a big part of the success because we didn't have whatever, $100,000 to put into inventory, but we could create a lot of unique SKUs and products that we loved. And if we had one of them as a sample and we took good content of it and put it on our website and, advertised it as make to order, it allowed us to generate a lot of sales without a lot of inventory, which was, a big part of the key to the success, which in turn, fast forward 7, 8 years, it also then became a detriment to the brand because we didn't have enough capital to inventory it properly, and we had a wait list for our custom cut and sew for like I think 4 to 6 months, which is not ideal. I mean, it was great that we had the brand awareness and the appetite in the market, but um, a lot of people, it was a lot of customer service of talking people off the edge and settling people down. So that was a big motive because I get a question I get a lot, like, why would you sell your baby? Why would you, um, go into a corporate world that seems like the opposite of what your brand was about? But it really was that at the end of the day, like there was too much anxiety for me to be responsible for the capital needed to really properly run and inventory the brand. So that was the main reason for wanting to do this corporate public ven that we've done, is because to properly inventory the brand now you're looking at you know $1 to $2 million.
Okay.
Um, so as a sole proprietor and a young parent, I just wanted some more security and to really be able to do the things with the brand that I could not do on a personal financial level.
Okay. And I feel like that makes sense. You have to evolve, and that's a part of the evolvement of your brand. And I want to know, where do you see it in the next 5 years? Like, how are you keeping up with the trends? Like, what are certain things you're doing differently to keep your brand on top and keep it unique and keep it in its niche?
It's a good question. Well, some on the forefront, we're launching a beer. We're going to be launching a pre-roll cannabis collection along with a like high-end can of cigar,
Okay, cool.
um, expanding the market into different ways, but also partnering um, with factories that can basically produce better garments than we were able to do locally in our little cut and sew shop at a better margin. So definitely our focus is going to be wholesale.
Okay.
uh, get our inventory now that this, like I said, this public funding's come through. um, and then that's going to be targeting way more wholesale accounts because literally we've been blessed by such a demand and inbound. We've never actually like tried to get wholesale accounts, and we've admittedly like fallen short on being able to service the wholesale accounts that have reached out to us. So that's a big priority of mine, is to get enough inventory to be able to connect with these wholesale accounts through Harley Davidson all across North America. We want to expand into Mexico, and Japan is a big part of our wish list for goals. I mean, we're very well connected in Mexico. We've hosted a ride called the Lust for Dust now for I think 7 years, where we ride to bike week in Mazatlan.
Mhm.
We were very fortunate that the first year we rode from Vancouver to Nicaragua, and I on Sportsters set up for like dirt, and I broke down on my bike in Mazatlan, and there was no Harley Davidson shop there, and we just kind of cruised around and found this one shop that had a neon Harley Davidson sign in the window, and kind of rolled in there and quickly felt like, oh, this is cartel country. This is Sinaloa. This is like where we get our bikes stolen, and are the quintessential gringo uh, that ended up where they were. But um, it was the complete opposite. A gentleman by the name of Paulo took us under his wing. He fixed my bike, took us out for drinks and tacos, wouldn't let me pay for anything. And then we had club escorts for the rest of the time that we were in Mexico, as he was the vice president of the Mazatlan Motorcycle Club
Mhm.
and one of the main producers for Bike Week in Mazatlan. So it's kind of was a is a real amazing experience, and I felt forever indebted to him, and he wouldn't take any money, so I kind of like, well, what can we do to repay you? And his thing was always just, we need positive PR that it's safe to come down and ride from Mexico, so just promote to your friends and your followers that Mexico's a safe place for motorcyclists, and that's all I ask of you. So yeah, we just started organizing a ride every year to go down and support him as a thank you, and we've been treated like amazing down there. It's probably some of the best treatment as a foreigner motorcyclist that I've had.
That's a really great takeaway because I've questioned myself because I live in California. I would love to go right down to Mexico, but I've always heard, negative things. So thanks for saying that. And that's a super great takeaway. And I'm sure, the people in that area are really appreciative and seeing these cool motorcyclists come into their area, which is awesome. So you've obviously seen a lot on your bike. And you've ridden South America, or I guess Central America, technically.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to know what differences do you see with the West Coast culture, West Coast aesthetic, and riding culture? How it differs from other parts of the world you've seen?
Um, yeah, well, I would say that, and speaking to your question before, like the West Coast California really sets the tone for Harley Davidson
Mm.
um, focused motorcycling. I would say um, for the rest of North America, really. So, and that was really the success of Lords as well in the Canadian market, because we were so obsessed with the California vibe, and we were blessed with people from California reaching out. One being Sean. Sean actually was one of the he was the reason why we went to Born Free.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he reached out. He got us a booth. Like, I think so bad with years now, but I want to say circa 2015 maybe was our first year at Born Free, and that really just solidified a lot of connections in California, and the brands that we really looked up to. It was like Suicide Machine Co., Rusty Butcher, San Diego Customs, and really we were blessed on just being able to bring that vibe to Western Canada, and then that kind of seemed to work its way across Canada as trends do. And then now
Canada needs it for sure.
we do actually we Lords was the reason why Simpson motorcycles helmets came to Canada. We were the first Canadian distributor.
Oh.
Uh, and when we first started wearing full face, we got clowned on because it was, everyone was wearing skull caps and beanies and three quarters, and it was like, oh, Harley riders don't wear full face. And now you look 10 years later, and it's pretty hard to find someone who's not on a performance-based Harley that's not wearing a full face of some sort now.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, I'd like to speak like I've been saying, I've been going down to Mexico. When we first went down to Mexico, there was not a lot of Harleys, definitely no Dynas or Road Glides, or I mean mostly Sportsters. And I just noticed last year, like it's like I would say grown by 200% the amount of Harleys, and there's a whole Dyna scene, club style scene down there, and it seems to be that trend is just catching on there. And friend of mine is speaking. He lived in Japan for 20 years, and he was saying same thing. Like that kind of aesthetic is really just catching on in Japan as well. So that's why we want to kind of focus on those markets for expansion, and also to be able to spend more time in those countries, obviously.
Yeah, of course, because I know you have a very limited riding time, hence why I moved down here. I can ride all year round. So, with that, what are some of your favorite places to ride?
Um, yeah, I love the West Coast and Southern America. Honestly, it's at one point I will do it, and but I haven't ridden a whole lot across Canada. I've ridden all over. I've ridden to Alaska. I've ridden all over the west coast of Canada and Alberta, but as you talk to anybody who has ride, like nobody really promotes riding through the prairies as an awesome place to ride. And but I would love. I do need to make it over to the East Coast. I've heard such good things. It's on my bucket list, but definitely Mexico, Baja, west coast of North America, and like I've ridden from California or LA all the way to Miami,
Mhm.
so I've done the whole bottom of America, and we rode through New Orleans for Jazz Fest, which is amazing. I'd love to go back and do some more riding around there, and yeah, so those are kind of my top. And like if you get the chance, like Alaska is like riding through a postcard for days on end. It's just weather dependent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. We actually had an annual ride that we just kind of bailed on. That we would ride to Alaska every year, but because it was just back to back years of just getting murdered with rain and sleet. To the point where when you're questioning, like, if I crash, I can go home. Like that that's not the most enjoyable, but at the same time, optically, like uh, it's like riding through a postcard. It's amazing. I definitely would love to do it whenever I can find the weather pocket that makes sense again.
So, speaking of crashing in a joking sense, have you ever been in a motorcycle accident? And if so, what did you learn and take away from it?
Yeah, actually, my the worst. I mean, I've been in, well, I guess like the worst one is definitely was coming back from Alaska. Um, and it was just a whole weird coincidence or series of events that happened. It was the one day we would ride to Hyder, Alaska, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, where that is, but it's a ghost town, and they have a tradition called getting Hyderized,
Mhm.
and it's basically you go there and you drink Everclear, and then they baptize you, and you say that you got Hyderized. So we had ridden there. It takes us from Vancouver about 5 days to get there. And by the time we got there, we were so exhausted from getting beat down from the weather that everybody went to bed early. We're all in bed by like 7 or 8 o'clock after going to the hotel. And we got up and it was a bluebird day. It was like the best day ever that we were leaving. Everyone was well rested. We went and got breakfast. It was super chill. We had made it there. Now it was like just trying to make our way back. And we were leaving down the highway, and there was three of us. Like that was the thing about that was so gnarly about that ride, is that like 12 or 14 guys would start, and by the end there would only be one guy between bikes going down, and people giving up, and people falling in love on the road and staying in certain towns and stuff like that. But so yeah, we left. There's three of us left on the road, and I was the second. It was a single lane highway going each way. I was the second rider, and there was a third rider behind me. And a black bear actually came out of the bush and went between me and the first rider,
Mm.
and um, it stopped in the oncoming lane and looked like it might come back, dart back across the road. And I was worried that maybe it got scared from the bike or whatever. So we were all doing about 100 kilometers an hour, maybe a little bit more. And I slowed down to maybe around 60 because I was worried that the bear was going to come back. And the rider behind me was focused on the bear and wasn't really focused on his lane position. And he drifted over behind me
Uh,
and didn't see that I had slowed down, and he was still doing 100. And basically, he took me out at like 100 kilometers an hour. And luckily, um, he hit me tire to tire. So his front tire hit my back tire. And luckily, I was wearing pretty good leathers, and I had a sissy bar with my big backpack stuffed on it. So basically, when he hit me, I did a backflip over him and over the bike onto the highway. I was ejected out of the bike,
wow.
and I just remember like seeing like ground sky, ground sky, ground sky, and like I had enough time to think like, am I ever gonna stop rolling? And then stopped, and then the next thing was like, oh shit, like I can't breathe. Like it's the most winded I've ever been, to the point again I had enough time to think like, oh, I'm not gonna breathe again. Like this is it. And then of course finally my air came back, and I was um the worst part of it was is because I had bought shitty gloves because my gloves were soaked and cold, and I bought shitty gloves, and I was because they were dry, and then my knuckles as I was rolling um got pretty smashed up. But the guy that hit me supermaned over his handlebars and slid on his face for probably like, I don't know, 20, 30 feet. And he was laying in the middle of the highway, and he was face down. His neck was all jacked up, and there was just a pool of blood like leaking out of his helmet. So we ran over there and was like yelling his name, and he didn't respond for again, like in that your adrenaline's going. I don't know. It could have been a couple minutes, but it felt like a long time. He wasn't responding. Like, oh shit, he's dead.
Mhm.
And um, finally he stands up, um, and he's like chasing his head like a baby, like, or like a drunk person that's lost their equilibrium. And he literally had to get tackled by another guy because he almost went off a cliff because he was so disorientated.
Yeah.
And like um so yeah, long story short, with that, like we got super lucky. His neck was okay. It was actually, he broke his collarbone, which is why it looked like his neck was. And he had just actually, he was wearing a full face helmet, so he couldn't see, but he had split open his lips, which was where the blood came from. But the fact that we walked, like, it looked like a dinosaur took a bite out of both of the motorcycles. And the fact that we walked away was
You're
crazy.
lucky. Yeah, and I guess too, what you learned, get good gloves so you don't fuck your hands up.
Well, yeah, that's what they say, is you don't want to cheap out on your gloves, your boots, your helmet, and your vest, and it's super true. And yeah, that was one lesson. And the other lesson was just, you never know. Like you think that you just never know. And make sure you tell the people that you love them, because that was a big thing for me. I had just become a father, and I was like freaking out that like I could have maybe not seen my daughter again. It was really like thing. And it was about an hour ride back to the hospital, which is also a comical experience. But the guy was so concussed that he was like on a 1 minute loop. So he would ask you like, oh my God, what happened? And I'd be like, oh, a bear crossed the road, we got into an accident, and yada yada yada. And then he'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I can't believe that happened. But what happened? And it
Mm,
was like literally for like an hour, to the point I'm like, dude, you got to stop talking. Let's just let it go. Let's just go to the hospital. And
I've been there. It's scary.
it is scary. And it was a small hospital, and it was on a Saturday, I believe. And we rolled up the hospital. There's nobody in the parking lot. We go to the front door and there's an intercom and it says like buzz for service. So we buzz this intercom, which goes to the director or manager who's at home, who
Mhm.
rings the line and it's like, hey, we've got an emergency. We had an accident here. Oh, just hold tight. We'll be right there. We're gonna go open up the hospital.
Wild.
It was wild. So they come and they open up the hospital for us. And they take us in, and it was a bizarre experience because the X-ray tech was an elderly lady. She was pissed off that we were there because she was taking care of her grandchild, and her grandchild had to come with her to the hospital. So this kid's running around,
Goodness.
and she was disorientated and pretty like ornery that she was having to be there, to the point that she X-rayed me, and then they came back. Looking back, it was just like, how did that? But anyway, she X-rayed me and she's like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just got into an accident. Like you're
You
supposed to
tell
tell.
me.
Yeah, she's like, "You have wires running all through your body," and I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" She's like, shows me the X-rays, and I'm like, "Oh my." I'm like, I'm wearing a heated vest under this, like, and then she pissed off again. She's like, "Oh, you should have told me." Like, I was just in a near death experience. Like, chill out, lady. Like,
Yeah.
and also, why didn't you put me in a gown or like whatever you're supposed to do? So, anyways, she was mad because she had to redo the X-rays again, and then they ran out of they ran out of like they're stitching up my my hands, and they ran out of the like dissolving stitch, so they actually had to switch to fishing line through the one parts of the stitches. It was like, yeah, this is like ghost town border, British Columbia, Alaska. It was a trip.
Jeez. Okay, well, what an experience. Glad you're okay. I mean, I'm glad you can look back in retrospect and laugh about it because that's a very gnarly time. Um,
Yeah,
Needless to say, wear your gear all the time.
where you're here, stay in your lane positions,
Right.
focus on the riders in front of you, ride to your experience, all those things.
Great advice. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It's really awesome to see where your brand has come, and I'm excited to see where it's going. And I think a lot of Canada really appreciates what you're putting out because we never had it before, and now Canadians can look cool. And thanks for the West Coast inspiration. So thank you again, and it was great chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and anytime.
Yes, thank you, and thanks everyone for watching, and we'll check you next time.